The stupid person is one of the most undervalued, misunderstood, and liberating figures in the world. There have been stupid people who have caused surprise and joy since time immemorial. We dismiss stupidity by seeing it as a weakness, yet we secretly envy the carefree nature of those unburdened by excessive thought. It is one of the most natural human states, which we all possess but learn to suppress. Many of us suffer from the absence of stupidity in our lives. Analytical and rigid, we take ourselves too seriously, trying so hard to appear intelligent in a world which promotes intellectualism, expertise, and sophisticated thinking that we might as well be prisoners of our own minds. As the philosopher Socrates recognized, the only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing. Forgetting that simplicity is a basic human need, we wonder why we so easily become anxious and exhausted, losing all capacity for spontaneity, contentment, and genuine laughter. The antidote to this would be to give the stupid archetype some space in our lives. To be in balance and not become excessively stupid, we need to develop the archetype of the sage, who despite being wise recognizes the limits of his knowledge and can laugh at himself every now and then. We need to understand when intelligence serves us and when it imprisons us, recognizing that the wisest person knows when to stop thinking and simply live. Archetypes are not part of a mechanical system, but pieces of life itself, images that are integrally connected to the living individual by the bridge of the emotions. The character of the stupid person is complex, and various characteristics have been attributed to them, that they are simple-minded, unaware of social complexities, unable to grasp sophisticated concepts, and that they have a natural directness and clarity of purpose. The derivation of the word stupid is the Latin stupidus, meaning stunned or amazed, as if struck senseless. Extended to people, it implies someone who acts without the paralysis of overthinking. At the same time, it can represent people who do things that are so weird and different from the normally acceptable way of doing it. In 1511, the Dutch scholar Erasmus published In Praise of Folly, which became hugely popular and is a profoundly penetrating examination of the fool in Western literature. Folly introduces herself, and since nobody ever praises Folly, she begins by praising herself, arguing that life would be dull without her. Folly criticizes everyone, and Erasmus' close friends warned him of the possible dangers of attacking the church. However, even religious figures found the work amusing. Intellectuals are foolish in their pursuit of knowledge, spending years going to the library, doing research, thinking that what they are doing is tremendously important, so that a few other intellectuals over a century will read their book and think very highly of it. Folly compares philosophers to theater critics who unmask the characters on stage and ruin the actor's performance. They are boring and annoying. Philosophers don't seem to understand how the illusions that help make life bearable are useful even if they distort reality. The archetypal stupid seems to be infinitely freer and happier than those who are burdened by wisdom. In our age of information overload, the stupid person represents a return to essential simplicity. They don't torture themselves with endless analysis, they don't spend hours researching every decision, and they don't lie awake calculating infinite possibilities. Stupid people always act on instinct because they lack the mental sophistication to craft elaborate plans and second-guess themselves endlessly. In essence, there is nothing that can make life more peaceful than the contentment that accompanies unthinking action and simple pleasure. Folly is not merely universal, but necessary and even desirable to humanity. To be a person is nothing other than to play the fool, and to acknowledge this very fact is the highest form of wisdom. The archetypal stupid represents a nostalgic return to a simpler way of life, a wisdom that comes not from the mind but from the heart. Sometimes the down-to-earth and simple-minded, in their purity of heart, can achieve more than those encumbered with analysis and doubt. In the same way, we sometimes sense a more resonant truth in popular proverbs than in rational exposition. Russian writer Fyodor Dostoevsky writes, "The wisest of all, in my opinion, is he who can, if only once a month, call himself a fool, a faculty unheard of nowadays." In literature, wise characters sometimes depict insanity and madmen express wisdom. The oxymoron, wise fool, is a literal paradox where the character who is identified as stupid comes to be regarded as the beholder of wisdom. People sometimes call achievers stupid to diminish their success, unable to accept that sometimes the most direct path is the most effective one. The archetypal stupid person is the one who acts while others think, who moves while others analyze, who lives while others contemplate. A common scenario is when there's an uncomfortable truth that needs to be spoken, and those in power are afraid to speak about it. It is usually the stupid, the fool, and the clown who steps in. There is something heroic about this. It is the stupid person who speaks a truth nobody else dares to utter, and this brings instant relief, because people know it has to be said. In fact, the great secret of the successful stupid is that he is not stupid at all. As the great English visionary artist William Blake writes, if the stupid would persist in his folly, he would become wise. The stupid, the clown, and the fool share similar traits. They are sources of humor, inevitably eliciting laughter, serving as catalysts for comic catharsis. However, they also express a duality: folly and non-folly, order and disorder. What may seem like a joke can in fact be a warning. Danish theologian and philosopher Søren Kierkegaard writes, "A fire broke out backstage in a theater. The clown came out to warn the public. They thought it was a joke and applauded. He repeated it. The acclaim was even greater. I think that's just how the world will come to an end, to general applause from wits who believe it's a joke." Professional clowns can bring a sense of awareness to what is going on in the world and where we are headed. Many of them, however, come from a place of tragedy. The contradictory association between comedy and mental disorders, such as depression and anxiety, is known as the sad clown paradox, where comedy can act as a defense mechanism to remove suppressed feelings of rage and aggression. People may respond with laughter at the clown, yet harbor feelings of pity, fear, or repulsion, evoking ambivalent reactions. Some people, in fact, suffer from Coulrophobia, the overwhelming fear of clowns. In this day and age, clowns are a constant source of horror in books and movies. Perhaps this is because the modern clown's role is always the same: to entertain others by being the subject of laughter, and he is not always successful at it. The clown has to sacrifice his well-being by always having to put on the same face and play the same character. This one-sidedness can take its toll mentally, and the clown slowly becomes enveloped by his shadow, the dark side of his personality. The evil clown archetype is best portrayed in the Joker, one of the most recognizable villain characters in popular culture. In medieval theater, clowns would not only make spectators laugh, but sometimes also snatch them off with them into a hellmouth, the entrance of hell envisaged as the gaping mouth of a monster, which scared the audiences. Thus, their light and dark sides were balanced. The archetypal stupid is able to have a sense of humor even in difficult situations, which radiates hope in others. In a tense atmosphere, the person who is hurt takes the risk to make a joke, even if it means making a fool of himself, not just to set himself at ease, but also to bring relief to others. Generally speaking, we can distinguish between two types of stupid people: the naturally simple, who lack mental complexity and act on pure instinct, being unaware of sophisticated considerations, and the deliberately simple, who have learned to shut off their analytical mind when it serves them. One follows their heart, the other has trained their mind to be quiet. The stupid person is fearless in taking action. As the Zen saying goes, you are perfect as you are, and you could use a little improvement. The stupid person doesn't get stuck in the improvement phase. They act from their current state of being. The stupid person and the child share similar traits. They are sources of authenticity, inevitably honest, serving as reminders of what matters. However, they also express a clarity, simplicity, and directness. In medieval times, the court jester's job was to entertain the aristocracy in a wide variety of ways: music, storytelling, satire, comedy, or juggling and acrobatics. It was believed that keeping a fool on the premises warded off the evil eye. This is no antiquated superstition. It represents a psychological truth of enduring value. It is usually a good idea to place the fool out front where we can keep an eye on him. We must make room for the renegade factor in ourselves and admit him to our inner court, where he can bring us fresh ideas and new energy. Without the archetypal stupid's blunt observations and playfulness, our inner landscape might become a sterile wasteland. During the Middle Ages, the Feast of Fools would be celebrated by the lower clergy on New Year's Day. To ensure society against unexpected uprisings of latent destructive urges, all conventions were temporarily suspended. The natural order of things was turned upside down, sacred rituals were parodied in obscene fashion, church authorities were ridiculed, and all underdogs were allowed to give vent to year-long repressions of hostility, lust, and rebellion. These blasphemous celebrations were eventually driven underground by the church. People may dismiss the stupid person as inferior, yet harbor feelings of envy for their peace of mind, evoking conflicted reactions. The intellectual has to sacrifice peace of mind by always analyzing, always questioning, always seeking more knowledge, and the thinker slowly becomes consumed by their own shadows. In Shakespeare's tragedy, King Lear, the king's relationship with the fool is one of friendship and dependency. When the king is left with his knights, he is a terribly lonely figure and keeps asking where the fool is. The king wants the fool to accompany him everywhere, acting as his alter ego. The fool can be expected to reverse relationships between those dominant and those subservient, as he is placed in the paradoxical position of virtual outlawry combined with utter dependence on the support of the social group to which he belongs. The stupid person and the genius have a few psychological similarities. Generally speaking, both are willing to appear foolish, but the stupid person is naturally this way, while the genius chooses to ignore social conventions when pursuing their vision. The genius knows the rules and breaks them. The stupid person never learned them in the first place. The stupid person loves life for its own sake, while the intellectual often loves the idea of life more than life itself. When there is an opportunity to enjoy a simple pleasure, the stupid person immediately embraces it. He is both the beginning and the end of the journey. He is heroic because he jumps off the plane of comfort into the place of the unknown. As the Chinese proverb goes, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The fool thinks of all the wonderful adventures that lie ahead and is less worried about making mistakes. He thinks on his feet, is energetic, and urges us to live life to the fullest, while the person who thinks too much is overcautious and remains stagnant. It is the fear of uncertainty that scares many of us to the point of paralysis. In order not to suffer from anticipation, we'd rather experience failure and sacrifice success. This state of rumination and overthinking creates anxiety, and one suffers more in imagination than in reality. Failure, however, can open new doors that one never imagined or expected to be open. What we think of abstractly as absolute failure may in fact lead to unimaginable success. As the alchemists say, in filth it will be found. To live simply helps to connect with what's real, because it removes the layers of analysis that separate us from direct experience. This courageous simplicity allows genuine response to life's situations. While the intellectual seeks to understand everything, the stupid person, on the other hand, seeks primarily to live fully, even if they understand little. In Tarot, the archetype of the stupid is commonly depicted as a man holding a white rose symbolizing innocence and purity, and a small bundle of possessions in the other. He is willing to sacrifice everything for the trip. He walks merrily looking up at the sky, living in a fool's paradise, absorbed in all the great adventures that await him. At his heels, a dog tries to draw his attention because he is about to fall off a cliff. One of the most beloved figures in Russian folklore is the stupid Ivan. The Russian writer Leo Tolstoy wrote a story titled Ivanushka Durashak, which translates to the stupid Ivan, alluding to this figure. In the story, Ivan is the youngest and third son in a peasant family. He is taken advantage of because of his naivety, kindness, and capacity to easily forgive others, even at his own expense. His brothers are tempted by money and military power. However, Ivan lives a simple way of life. He lives on a farm, taking care of his old father and mute sister, and works in the fields. When the two brothers run out of money, they insist on getting their share of their father's wealth. The father objects because it is Ivan and his sister who have helped him. Ivan, however, agrees to his brother's demands. The old devil, seeing Ivan's generosity and lack of conflict between the brothers, sends a little devil to each brother to start a feud. The two devils succeed in tempting the two brothers with greed and power, and they get into trouble. Ivan, who is stricken with illness by the devil, only works harder and overcomes all obstacles. The three little devils get together in order to defeat Ivan, but they all fail. As Ivan finds each devil one by one, they beg for their life and tell him that they'll grant him any wish if he spares their life. And so, Ivan is granted a wish and innocently utters, "God bless you," which makes them vanish. He can make gold out of leaves and soldiers out of straw, and decides to give the gold coins to the village peasants and conjure up soldiers to sing and dance. Finally, the old devil loses his patience and goes to Ivan, but is also defeated. While Ivan relies on his heart and believes in legends and mythical beliefs, the brothers focus on their minds and practicality. Ivan ends up marrying the Tsar's daughter. The man who has nothing receives everything. The stupid becomes the hero. The archetypal stupid person seems to possess magical powers and has lady luck on his side. His spontaneous approach to life combines wisdom, madness, and folly. When he mixes these ingredients in the right proportions, the results are miraculous, but when there is one-sidedness, everything can end up in a sticky mess. In many cultures, anyone who dares to be simple or act without endless analysis is considered stupid by those who are too afraid to act and would never risk appearing unsophisticated. To make their approach known, the stupid person acts while others think. In the manner of a child asking, "Why is the emperor naked?" The simple perspective could reveal truths that sophisticated analysis might miss. Because of their directness, stupid people are often immune to social pressure and allowed to speak honestly. Nevertheless, some of them go too far and miss important nuances. Stupid people represent values which are dismissed by sophisticated society because they oppose intellectual complexity and academic standards. They are seen as inferior, frequently dismissed for their simplicity, and are thus social outcasts. However, every society needs such figures because they are agents of action, and the vitality of culture requires that there be space for figures whose function is to cut through complexity and act on what matters. The myth of Parsifal, an old Arthurian legend, describes the journey that a boy must undertake to become a man. He is known as Parsifal, stupid guy, and lives alone with his mother. After seeing knights pass by him, he is marveled and decides to leave his mother in order to become a knight himself, and goes through many trials that initiate him into manhood. In the story, the Grail Castle is in serious trouble. The Fisher King, the king of the castle, has been wounded. His wounds are so severe that he cannot live, yet he is incapable of dying. He is rendered infertile, and his kingdom is barren. This expresses how the psychological wound manifests itself in problems in the external world. Every adolescent receives his Fisher King wound. It is the graduation from naive consciousness into self-consciousness. It is painful to watch an adolescent grow up and realize that the world is not just joy and happiness. However, his first contact with a wound is what later will be redemption in life. Every night there is a solemn ceremony in the Grail Castle. One of the maidens holds the Holy Grail, filled with wine, and each person that drinks from it is granted their deepest wish. The Fisher King, however, does not participate and is suffering alone. No further outward effort is possible if our inward capacity is wounded. It is perhaps the deepest form of suffering to be right in front of beauty, happiness, and holiness, but unable to partake in any of it. The court fool had prophesied long ago that the Fisher King would be healed when an innocent fool arrived in the court and asked a specific question. One day, Parsifal finds a man in a boat fishing on a lake. It was the Fisher King. He asked if there was any place to stay the night, to which the Fisher King gave him the directions to the Grail Castle. Parsifal attends the ceremony, but the Fisher King is groaning in agony alone. The stupid boy, who refused to remove the homespun garment made by his mother, remembers her advice not to ask too many questions, symbolizing a mother complex. He forgets what he was taught by the godfather figure who trained him and does not talk to the Fisher King. The following day he leaves the castle. As he turns around, the castle was nowhere to be seen. It took Parsifal 20 long and painful years to find the Grail Castle again. The original myth ends here. The inner castle is always there, but appears invisible to our eyes, unless we see the world with new eyes. Many of the continued stories say that after Parsifal revisited the Grail castle, he asked the Fisher King, "Whom does the Grail serve?" Immediately, he was healed, and peace and happiness reigned over the land. The Grail is the center of meaning in human life, and the meaning of life is to serve the Grail or higher self. Jungian analyst Robert A. Johnson writes, "A man must consent to look to a foolish, stupid, innocent, adolescent part of himself for his cure. The inner stupid is the only one who can touch his Fisher King wound." It is painful to watch someone develop sophistication and lose their natural simplicity. However, this first contact with overthinking is what creates the need for return to simplicity. The wise person learns that there is a ceremony of simple living. One approaches life directly without endless analysis, and each moment lived simply grants peace. The intellectual, however, does not participate and is suffering from analysis paralysis. No mental effort is possible when our natural capacity is blocked by overthinking. While the stupid person has many positive aspects, he can also be so stubborn that he does not take a moment to step back and reflect, to look where he is headed, so he falls off a cliff. The stupid stands on the edge. Sometimes our inner intuitive voice of protection becomes judgmental and self-perpetuating. The voice that tells you, "Be careful, you will make a fool of yourself. That is a dumb question. Everyone is going to laugh at you and judge you. You sound ridiculous." This is the voice of conformity and the dark side of the archetype of the stupid. It is the voice that causes you to dumb down and play it safe, to be content with superficial pleasures and safety, and strive for other people's acceptance to the detriment of your true desires. This happens when we are unconscious of our inner stupidity, which leads to jealousy, resentment, shame, and other neuroses. Many stories tell of the intellectual who must return to their simple nature to find peace. They rediscover the child within, who sees clearly and acts naturally. The simple mind is the center of authentic living, and the meaning of life is to serve this natural self. Jungian analyst Robert Johnson writes, "A person must consent to look to a simple, natural part of themselves for their cure. The inner child is the only one who can heal our complexity wound." In Don Quixote, which is often considered the first modern novel, Spanish writer Miguel de Cervantes portrays a man who is driven mad after reading many books of chivalry. He decides to become a knight-errant under the name of Don Quixote. He rides on his weak horse and goes on to defend the innocent and defeat the wicked, only to do exactly the opposite. All this he does in the name of a peasant woman whom he idealizes as a princess, but remains unseen in the novel. The term quixotic refers to a person who is apt to be deluded, unable to distinguish reality from imagination, and pursues lofty and romantic ideals that are impractical. Don Quixote recruits Sancho Panza as his sidekick and squire, a down-to-earth peasant who is puzzled by his master's grandiose fantasies, but being promised great wealth, follows him riding a donkey. Sancho's realism contrasts with his master's idealism. Don Quixote's good intentions, however, end up doing harm to those he meets, since he is largely unable to see the world as it really is. He is not only seen as a fool, but a complete madman. Despite his insanity, he is witty and at times seemingly sane, so long as he avoids the topic of chivalry. This may be a warning that even the most intelligent people can fall victim to their own foolishness. At the end, Don Quixote becomes sick and falls asleep, and later awakes from a dream, awakening from his madness too. He realizes that he has wasted his life and is just crazy. The atmosphere of the novel turns from comedy to tragedy, and the people who looked at him with scorn can't help but feel pity for him. They insist that he is wrong and that he really is a knight. What was before viewed as insanity is now considered sanity. After his life-giving illusions are dissipated, he dies. He dies from an overdose of reality. This brings in the question, is it better to know the truth and be unhappy, or live in a fool's paradise? The term stupid may refer to a person who acts from pure motive, unable to distinguish between what's complicated and what's essential, and pursues direct and honest goals that are practical. They are not only seen as stupid, but as naive. Despite their lack of sophistication, they are effective and at times surprisingly wise. so long as they avoid the trap of trying to appear smart. This may be a warning that even the most natural people can fall victim to the complexity trap. At the end, the simple person faces the choice between sophistication and authenticity and chooses to remain true to their natural self. They realize that happiness lies not in appearing intelligent, but in being genuine. The atmosphere turns from complexity to simplicity, and people who once dismissed them can't help but recognize their effectiveness. In many fairy tales, we see three brothers, the youngest being a simpleton whom everybody laughs at, but it is always this stupid one who becomes the hero in the story. He is the foolhardy brother who rushes in where angels fear to tread, and by doing so wins the hand of the princess and her kingdom. They insist that intelligence isn't everything and that authenticity matters more.